Hi everyone, I'm Audrey, and today I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about my school/study tips and tricks. I don't really know what this video is going to be called, but basically I use a little bit of a lot of different things to stay on top of my schedule, to get good grades and all that. So I'm kind of just going to share all of it with you, and so hopefully maybe just one of these things will help you guys. I have a very busy schedule, and so it's important for me to stay organized and to stay on top of things. I'm going to go through, again, how I stay on top of things, planners, calendars, how I take notes, how I study for tests, how I stay off my phone, how I don't procrastinate. All of that stuff is going to be in here. So I'm going to try to put timestamps below in either the description box or in the comments so you guys can kind of go to where you guys feel like you need help, or you can just watch the whole video. I'm going to mention a lot of different apps and stuff in this video, but none of it's sponsored. I've been using this for a really long time and I'm very excited to share this video. I have a whole list in front of me of stuff that I want to talk about, and so I'm just going to get started. So technology in our lives, it can be very helpful. It can also be kind of hurtful, but I'm going to start with how it helps me. So I use a lot of different apps to kind of stay on track of my schedule and to study and all that. So I'm gonna mention all of those right now. The first app that I absolutely love, I started using it about a year ago. It's called Google Keep. So it's basically notes, if you know what the iPhone Notes app is, but it's the Google version of it, and I think it's a lot better. There's a lot more features on it. I always have my phone on me, so it's helpful to start checklists and to-do lists and little notes here and there throughout the day on it. Because it's with Google, it syncs with your Google account, so you can pull it up on your computer, you can pull it up on your phone. When you make a note, you can add checklists, pictures, voice memos, and drawings, and then you can also add other people to a note as collaborators, much like lots of other Google things. I also like to pin notes, which I like for notes that I'm using frequently. And then you can search notes, which makes it super organized. So you can search by word or you can search by color. The color coordinated things are some of my favorite things to do. I think my Target list is red, and then my Amazon list is yellow, and I just have a bunch of different colors going on. It makes it more organized in my head, and it's also pleasing to look at. So I would definitely recommend Google Keep for all notes. Another thing that I use for to-do lists is the Reminders app that comes with iPhone. I use this for more short-term to-do lists, so things that I'm going to check off right away. So packing lists, when I want to remember something in the morning, I'll put it on that, so it's more a temporary kind of thing. Reminders is strictly to-do lists. Google Keep is kind of the notes and reminders app in one, but reminders is strictly to-do lists. You can color coordinate it too. You can also schedule a reminder, so your phone will get a notification at a certain time, which is nice. But yeah, those are the two kind of things that I stay on top of my to-do list if I'm not writing them down. Study-wise, some apps that I use. One that I use a lot is Quizlet. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's pretty well known where I live. Quizlet is basically online flashcards. You can make your own study sets or you can use other people's. I have been using it for anatomy. I've used it for a lot of other classes too, but right now you'll see that I use it for anatomy. I had a test last week or something, but I used someone else's anatomy study set for stuff that I had to memorize in labeling. So they already put pictures in their note cards and stuff, so it was super easy to just go onto there and use it. And then I made one for myself. I think it only has 25 terms, and those were things that were straight out of my teacher's lecture that I knew were going to be on the test. So I kind of utilized both using someone else's and my own. When you make your own, they make it really easy. You can type in the word and then it'll pull up a definition already typed for you. That's kind of a new feature. You can also type it in yourself if that'll help you remember things, or if they don't have the perfect definition that you want. They also have games on there which help me study a lot, and then also if you're just on your phone and you want to take a break and play a game that's actually studying, that's what I find myself doing often. Speaking of flashcards, I do use paper flashcards. I actually haven't used them in a while, but I use them for Spanish class a lot because writing usually helps me remember things a little bit better. My tip for that is to cut your index cards into thirds, because usually when you're writing on an index card, you only need one word or a word in a small definition. This makes them smaller and easier to store and carry around. It also saves paper, which is really nice. Also, when I do flashcards, I like to do them in different colors. That's kind of my flashcard tip to memorize vocab words and whatnot. Quizlet and then paper flashcards cut in thirds. Speaking of games, I know I talked a little about it with Quizlet. Games really help me study, and games can be easily found online. I'm just going to use anatomy as an example again because I'm in anatomy right now, but the other day we had to memorize the body terms, I would just look up on Google like anatomy, like blah 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 game, and then things will come up. Or like in World Geo, when you need to memorize countries, you can play the game, you can beat your high score, which for me is really nice because I am a competitive person, and you can keep working on it until you get it right. There are a bunch of games online. If you haven't already utilized that to memorize things, I would. If you just look in Google, games will pop up. Another thing that helps me learn and memorize things is watching YouTube videos. So I look up YouTube videos. I basically either look up the topic or the chapter. I use this a lot in history class, so just to get my grasp on things. There are some videos that I liked. It's like explaining World War I in 10 minutes or stuff like that. Stuff where it goes by really fast and just hits the high points, and I would remember things from the lecture from that. I'm a very visual learner, and so seeing the pictures and the little illustrations that the videos give you help me, and I would listen and watch these while I'm getting ready or before I'm going to bed. And it also doesn't really take a lot of work for me, like kind of just listening and watching. It also helps for science to explain things. Math, I use YouTube videos a lot if I don't know how to do a certain math problem. There are a bunch of teachers up there who literally just like film themselves like teaching their lesson to their class, and sometimes they teach it better or in words that you better understand than when your teacher does it. I have never had a problem not finding a YouTube video that I want to watch of the subject that I need to watch. Another thing kind of with the listening is audiobooks. I really like to listen to audiobooks, especially when I'm on a time crunch. This is kind of more for English class. I buy the audiobook online and I either sit and read along with the audiobook, or I listen to the audiobook before school when I'm getting ready or before I'm going to bed. With audiobooks, you can up the playback speed, which makes it go faster, and also if you're reading along, if you up the playback speed, it'll help you read faster and more on track. That way you can plan on how much time it's going to take you. Some of the classic books that you read in English are already on YouTube as audiobooks, so you don't really have to buy them. So make sure before you buy an audiobook, you look on YouTube to see if it's on there. And then there's also a bunch of different places where you can buy audiobooks. It saves a ton of time. And then also if I'm having trouble reading a book, having the audiobook play while I'm reading helps me understand it. So I would definitely recommend audiobooks. So that's most of my tips, like study-wise and how to really like learn things. Moving on from the way technology mostly can help you, I'm going to talk about phone restrictions. I feel like all of us at this point kind of have a problem of staying on our phones too much, which is understandable. So I actually set phone restrictions for myself. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of them, or maybe your parents put phone restrictions on your phone for you, but I did it myself. So it's in settings under screen time. You set your own password, and so if you absolutely need to get on Snapchat, you can because you know the password. So it's under screen time. You can see that I've been on my phone for almost 3 hours today. That's because I'm just now turning them on. I turned them off for summer because I wasn't gonna have phone restrictions on for summer, and then I kind of forgot about them until this video. So they're going back on today and my phone time will go down. Basically, you set limits per app, and then once you reach that limit for the day, it turns off, turns all the notifications off too. And if you want to go into the app, you have to type in your password, and then once you type in your password, you can hit allow for 15 minutes, allow for an hour, or allow for all day. So those three options are also nice. When you want a study break and you've already used all your time, you can say allow for 15 minutes, and so that way it'll shut off in 15 minutes and then you can get back to studying. Even if you don't have self-control and you're thinking, oh, if I have my password, like I'm literally just gonna go on it all the time, when your time limit reaches, the notifications will turn off, so you'll kind of forget about it a little bit, or at least that's what I do. Another feature on phone restrictions is downtime. So my downtime starts at 10 p.m. and then it stops at 3:55 a.m. I think. That's because like when I get up for practice, I don't want downtime to still be going on, but it just matters really when it starts. So downtime is when it shuts off all of your apps, no matter how much time you've been on them. So at 10, all of my apps just turn off. There are certain apps of mine that don't turn off, and that is under always allowed apps. So basically I mainly put a bunch of apps that I use for studying, because obviously if I'm studying past 10 o'clock, I'm gonna want those, but the social media ones and all the other apps turn off at that time. Just like the phone restriction one, during downtime you still can go on there, but it turns off all the notifications. It also, like, sometimes I'll lose track of time and then all my apps will shut off and I'm like, oh my god, it's already 10 o'clock, like I need to go to sleep. So that's kind of what I use for phone restrictions. I would highly recommend it. Just try it. You can always turn it off, especially if you set your own password. Just don't forget your password. Another thing I do to prevent procrastination, I write to-do lists with times. So for example, sometimes on weekends when you have this whole chunk of time that you're not really doing anything, in order to stay on track, make time limits for yourself. So I'll say like, oh, I'm gonna study for my history test for 30 minutes. So you set a 30-minute time frame from when you're going to study. So doing that kind of helps me mentally get prepared for it if like the time is later, and be like, okay, like at this time I am going to study. And then for those 30 minutes, knowing that you've set 30 minutes for yourself, I don't go on my phone, I don't get sidetracked, I focus those 30 minutes purely on studying, because I know that once those 30 minutes are up, I can do whatever I want. I also set timers and alarms for those things, so I'll put my phone away, I'll set a timer, and then once the 30 minutes is up, I'll go get my phone, I'll be done studying. For me, it mostly works on the weekend, because during the weekdays, I have like a limited time of when I actually can do homework, so I'm doing homework. But for the weekend, when I don't necessarily have a lot going on, that's when I kind of need to set those boundaries for myself. Now I'm going to talk about calendars, kind of going back a little bit to another app. I use the Google Calendar. I've also used the iPhone calendar, but I like the Google Calendar better because, again, with Google, you can pull it up on your computer, you can pull it up with your email and stuff. They also have cute little photos, like whenever I say I have a swim meet, it shows like a little pool and stuff. It's easy to see things. There's like 5 different views that you can put it in. You can put it in like hourly, by day, by week. I usually look at it by monthly. I use this calendar for long-term events. So basically, if I'm at a doctor's appointment, or if there's an event within a few months that I need to put on my calendar, I'll put it in my phone calendar, because one, I always have my phone with me, and two, like it's kind of permanent in there. Like even if I lose my phone, it's still synced with my Google account. Otherwise, with like planners, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, I could lose my planner anytime, and I'm not really looking that far ahead in my planners. Also, with Google Calendar, there are a lot of things that will sync to it. So over summer, my work schedule synced to my Google Calendar. It's kind of this like button that you have to press like within the system. It kind of syncs to your Google Calendar. You just put in your email, because everything's through your email. Also, with that being said, if you get a certain date or appointment or something through your email, there's usually like a little button that says like add to my calendar, and you can put it in your Google Calendar. And then kind of for school oriented stuff, I use planners. So I buy a planner every year for school. Sometimes I use it a lot, and then there's some weeks that I literally have nothing in there at all. But I use them for in-class stuff when they're talking about homework assignments that are due. I don't usually put that in my online Google Calendar at all, because like those little things I just like to write down. I pulled out all my planners from the past couple of years, and I'm going to kind of go through them. They're all different kinds of calendars, and so some styles may help you guys more than others. This year, I'm not really using a planner. I'm using a journal, but I'm using it as a planner because I've kind of gotten into more of the to-do list kind of thing. So I use to-do lists more than I use like day-by-day planners. Planners are kind of how I keep up with short-term like school stuff mainly, and then my Google Calendar is how I keep up with long-term events for like swim and other like events. So now I'm going to talk about notes a little bit, kind of going back to studying. I feel like this video is kind of all over the place, but we're just going to go back to studying. I use what I call flow notes. I don't know what else other people call, but basically while the lecture's going on or while I'm reading, I'll just write down kind of how it's like working in my head, if that makes sense. So in my notes, you'll see a lot of arrows, a lot of like indents, a lot of just like them kind of all over the page, but it flows. So that's why I call them flow notes. For me, it's easier to go back and study them. And then also when things are just in different parts of the page, and obviously as you see in my notes, and they're all different colors, it helps me remember them in the test. So I always put dates in a certain color, I put keywords, and then I put them in different parts of the page, and so I'll remember in the test. I'll like, I don't know if other people do this or if this is just insane. I'll be like, okay, I remember that being in the left bottom portion of my notes, and then it'll help me remember things better. So the super colorful notes that you see are mainly from my history classes. So last year in my AP US history class, my teacher would talk a lot. Our whole class period would be lectures, so they would be really long, and so I would have more time to do kind of intricate details and like make my notes look pretty. And then some of my notes are a lot less colorful. So this year my anatomy notes, she goes really fast during her lectures, so I can't put as much detail into the colors. I'm kind of just focusing on the information, but I do have like 3 different colors opened on my desk that I can switch out super quickly, and so you can kind of still see an organization. It's not as crazy as my history notes, I feel like. For math, I almost never use color because I feel like math is more like examples and stuff. For math, the way I study is not really looking at my notes, it's more practice and like going back and looking at examples, so I'm not really focused on like how it looks. But for anatomy and history, like I'll remember where things are. For online notes, my government class, I've started doing online notes instead because he already makes us have a computer out on our desk. I do it on Google Docs. My tip for that is to know your shortcuts to italicize, underline, bold, all of that. It makes it easier to type things. I am an awful typer, but I'm getting better at it because I'm taking these notes. When I study notes, I usually just read through them. Yeah, my notes aren't the prettiest, like they're not perfect, but for me, they're pretty enough that I like want to go back and look at them, and so that's really important to me. Flow notes are really just easy for me to just read through, especially history if it goes in chronological order. I've never really been a fan of like Cornell notes or whatever, I don't know. There's so many different kind of note taking, but this is the best kind of note taking that I like to do. Yeah, that's note taking. I think that's all. Kind of a lot. I know there's a lot in here, but I do not use all of these like perfectly. I don't want you guys to stress about school because honestly, at the end of the day, it's not worth your happiness and your mental health to get an A in the class. I know these days there's a lot of pressure for everyone to get perfect grades and to get a 4.0, but it's really not the end of the world if you don't get a 4.0 and if you don't get into the #1 college in the United States. Like, it's okay. Make sure you're focusing on your mental health and that you're happy and you have a good balance in life. And hopefully some of this can help you guys stay on top of things. I find that having my life super balanced makes me less stressed. But if I have a nice balance between friends, swim, YouTube now, and school, everything is a lot less stressful. I hope you guys all have a great school year. Hopefully, again, this will help you guys. Don't stress too much. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.